Who are some of the winners of day 3 at the NBA Combine? We are live here in Chicago. Find out on Locked On NBA Big Board. What's up? My name is Richard Stayman. You know me better as @MavsDraft on Twitter. Do a lot of scouting reports and just have been doing scouting for over 10 years. I'm joined by Leif Thulin, one of the smartest minds in college basketball. We attended day 3 of the NBA Draft Combine. We've been here all week. This is the end of the scrimmages of the official really events. Now it's the pro days. What stood out to you in the final day of scrimmages, Leif?
I think you can tell who knew how to play and which players were not affected by the bigger stage, that weren't changing their game to impress scouts, that they played their role and starred in their role versus some of those guys who are trying to do more than they're used to or be more unselfish and passing down shots that they were desired to take. In the first game, I thought the standouts were Nikola Jurisic and Coleman Hawkins. Both of them knocked down open shots, shot the open ones, and in the case of Hawkins, was able to pass the ball effectively and play as like an operator of the point guard position from the 5 spot. And I was pretty impressed by he and Jurisic. And they just played their roles to perfection and used their plus size to do their advantage.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd add 2 names to that too, Jalen Bridges and KJ Simpson as well. And just some stats for those, got these pulled up. So first we started with Coleman Hawkins, who went 6 of 7, had 17 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3 turnovers, no blocks, no steals. And then also KJ Simpson had 11 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 turnovers, 1 steal. And then Jalen Bridges, 3 of 7, had 4 rebounds, had 10 points. And then you said Naquan Tomlin, right?
Jurisic.
Sorry, it was Nikola Jurisic. He probably had the biggest game, 16 points, 7 of 12, 2 of 4 from 3, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, only 1 turnover. Like, he looked really good. At times, I think he is a little bit on and off on the motor, but overall, I think he looked the most like, if you were going to pick a riser from that game, I think it's Nikola Jurisic.
Yeah, I think if you were to look at that game between both teams, I would say he was probably the guy who improved his stock the most. He looked the part. He was 6'7" without shoes yesterday or Monday on the testing. He shoots it kind of a flatter ball, but he hit a couple threes, drove to the rim, had one where he had a delicate left-hand hook shot where he dropped in, but also another one where he slashed the rack and dunked it. Jurisic is a guy that I think is rising into first-round contention, whereas most of these guys I think were playing for mid-second rounds. And he, along with another guy that I love, and I'm sure we'll talk about him, Baylor, Scheierman, I think were 2 of the best players that just kind of knew their role, executed it well, used their size and their shooting ability to play with gravity and make teams really respect them. And then for Coleman Hawkins, he went 6 of 7, but he did all of that basically in the first half. He played 22 minutes total, but he also was not really trying to score in the second half. He scored all those and then was mostly facilitator in the second half. So I think those numbers didn't really indicate how impressive his performance was in the first half in particular.
Yeah, and also just quick heads up, if you hear background noise, because we are at Wintrust Arena still at the stadium, so there may be noises that we really can't control, but we wanted to give you the live experience and everything. With Jurisic, he's just turned 20 years old. He'll spend almost his entire 20-year-old, like his first rookie season as a 20-year-old. That's a big thing. I think that'll help him. He's 6'7", like you said, without shoes. He looked the part. Like, if there was anybody, I think it was him. And then let's obviously talk about Baylor Scheierman. Yesterday, we said how this event is really designed to test your feel for the game. Like, it's not necessarily your ability. Everybody is here for a reason. It tests that. Are you able to shine in any given role with no chemistry with any of these guys? And for a lot of teams, that's how they view it, is just feel for the game. And with that, I think Baylor Scheierman, and not only does he embody like feel for the game, if you watch him on tape all year and at South Dakota State dating back 4 years ago, he really fits the part of like his feel for the game pops. He was always able to make everybody around him better, didn't make mistakes. Those are the clear cut winners, at least of the first 2 games or the first game. But like, I would say really the entire scrimmages, like those are the head and shoulder guys where we can say, okay, they probably put themselves into the first round.
Well, Scheierman, to me, I had high, and as I've been telling you guys for a while, but what I think he displayed that maybe some people hadn't seen if they hadn't watched as much Creighton and they just watched, okay, he's a shooter. But you saw that he's got the playmaking ability that he's had since he played at South Dakota State as the guy. In the pick and roll, I thought no one made actual better reads than Scheierman today, where he came off, played off 2 feet, had a little kind of fake spin pivot back into the middle, scored a couple where he dumped off to bigs for dunks. He had a nice kick out pass to Bronny James that Bronny knocked down. And for Scheierman, I think what you see is someone who's able to score when he wants the ball in his hands, and he's able to attack closeouts and make the proper decisions, as well as just excelling in the role that he's going to have and accepting it. He knocked down threes. He was kind of the character guy on the bench. And what I mean by that is he would jump off and celebrate. He talked nonstop. He was the loudest guy on defense, communicating with his teammates, hit open shots, hit the right passes, communicated on defense. And that if you're drafting role players, the later you get into this draft, and even at the top. So he I think understands that and excelled at his role. And the other thing I would add about the way he played is so many of the players that you would compare him to if you were to look at like standings, like Pelle Larson or guys of that ilk, didn't understand what their role was today and didn't necessarily perform well at what they were trying to do either. And just understanding exactly what one's role is made sense. And I also think if you were to look at his statistics, and Richard can speak to this as he uses Bart Torvik more than I do, he has a unique profile in that his production levels are very, very high, and it's not at a mid-major. It's at Creighton. He's a third-team All-American, and you don't see people who shoot it that well typically have that level of production.
Yeah, that combination of high-level shooter with decent to above-average size or great size even, plus rebounding ability, plus playmaking, and minimal turnovers, it's just a very unprecedented combination, especially for somebody as productive as he is. A lot of these guys, they start specializing that the passing will go down, the scoring will go up, or vice versa. It's not the case with him. He has such an easily scalable down game, and that's why we think he did so well at the scrimmages. And also, just for reference, I said that they were in the same game. We just crossed games. That was the second game. We just finished watching that game, so it's a little bit fresh. But ultimately, Baylor Scheierman went 4 of 7. Didn't have to have the ball in his hands a ton. Only 3 assists, but he was still making good passes. 1 steal, only 1 turnover, 1 rebound, but it was just like in his 18 minutes he was out there, he made the most of his plays.
He felt like he was the most in control. If you're to look at the other players of that game, I think we should talk about Bronny James coming up in the next segment and analyze, because he's very, very highly scrutinized. But I felt like he deserved the hype that he sometimes gets, and everyone says, oh, it's clout chasing from different avenues. He played very well, knocked down open shots, made good plays. Scheierman, he connected a few different times. And then one other guy, before we get to Bronny James, is another guy who played in LA, would be Adem Bona. I just wanted to stay consistent because we've been talking about how he was a winner of the combine. I think he was a winner again. He made plays that made you go, wow, because he jumped so high, blocked 2 shots that you thought were for sure over anyone. And Bona got up and not only got a finger piece on them, he slapped them. And then he caught rebounds, dunked them, ran hard, played really hard. And his free throws, not great success, but the touch looks significantly better than what it was the first 2 years at UCLA. So I think the stock is trending up for he and Bronny James coming out of LA.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bronny a little bit more later on in more detail, but we also really liked Adem Bona, like Leif said. With Adem, he fouls a lot. Like, he fouled out yesterday. Yeah, he had 6 fouls, and that was alarming. He chases everything, but there's pros and cons to that, right? If you can control that, it's a really good skill. If you can't, then that's a negative. That's kind of his swing stuff. But he's a diver on the offensive end, and he will make plays happen on the defensive end. So we'll talk about Bronny James, but we'll talk about that on the other side. Let's talk about eBay Motors real fast. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED, headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because you're with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Let me ask you something. Leif, are you watching ESPN and Fox Sports all the time?
Typically, if I'm watching the playoffs.
Do you feel like you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting going on? And if so, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we were talking about Bronny James, and I don't think either of us really consider him as somebody with, okay, if it was in the middle of, if he was a regular freshman 6'1" out of another school, like just a random name, would he be here? Probably not.
Yeah, probably.
I don't think he would be, but we can't be playing that game right now. We kind of just have to see what's in front of us. And yesterday I didn't feel like there was a lot there, so we didn't talk about him. But today I actually think he made a lot of plays. He was shooting, he was passing, he had a turnover that ultimately did end up, like I said, it was a turnover. It was a pass that he got it off a loose ball. He saw a cutter. He threw it just a little bit too high. But overall, the idea, when you don't have chemistry with these guys, getting the turnovers isn't the bad thing if you make the right play. That usually does work. And I think that was really impressive with Bronny. His stat line was 4 of 10. It doesn't scream anything crazy, but 2 of 5 from 3. Had 2 assists, 2 turnovers. Didn't have a ton going on there. Got to the line a couple times, but it was just a lot of the processes actually looked really good. And of course, because his dad is LeBron, who was in attendance today, walked in right near us, he will be getting a lot of NBA chances. Just how long is that leash? I think that's the biggest question, because it doesn't really matter what he does. He's going to be in the NBA.
Now, here's the question. If it was the same statistics, same percentages, have a 6'1" freshman, even though his vertical is 40 inches, he knocked down a bunch of threes in the star drill. Would he get the same buzz? Absolutely not. But what he did do was he stepped down, knocked down open shots. He made proper reads. Even some of his best plays didn't show up in the stat sheet. He made a really great pass, which actually got a loud applause from his dad. And he yelled, "Great pass!" And it was a nice, comes off a screen to the left, head fake, threw a pocket pass to Adem Bona. Bona went up to try to dunk. He got fouled hard. And I think some of those intangible plays you can't see from the box, or you can't even see from not being in the stadium, where you don't understand how fast he's moving. Where off the ball, I thought he did a really nice job cutting, as well as defensively he competed. Like he switched onto bigger guys, and I made the comment to Richard, he kind of has the football player build, in the sense he looks like a big corner or a safety, and in the body type, and he's kind of got some room to fill into his body physically, but he looks strong and coordinated. His shot looks pure, and he had confidence to shoot it. Even though he's on a team full of seniors, he was the underclassman, but everyone's on an even playing field here. And though he may feel tons of pressure, which he probably does everywhere he's gone, I thought he handled it pretty nicely. And no, he wasn't a top 5 player in this combine of the scrimmagers, or even in these games necessarily. But what he did well is what his role will be. And I think that's as much as what you can control at this point is, hey, your role is going to be X, Y, or Z in the NBA. And if you perform those things well, I think that the scouts will be happier with that than if you necessarily go dunk the ball or something.
Agreed.
And there's a couple guys that did that. They had highlight plays, but I don't think it was actually important to the game, like A.J. Johnson.
Yeah. Let's talk about A.J. Johnson. He actually, he had 6 assists. That was pretty good. 3 rebounds, but he went 2 of 7 with 4 points. One of those 2 makes was a leak out dunk where it was just a chance for him to dunk. The other was actually pretty impressive in the half court, got to the rim like with a man on his hip and dunked on somebody.
And he soared. He went up there.
When we talk about the premier athletes in this class, like it's him. He is up there. I know there's a lot of scouts that do like him. I've talked to this week that think like he is a good upside play, and he probably ends up with a very early second or late first round pick. But look, for me, my issue is this exact combination. He has the athletic tools. It's really nice. He really struggles to shoot. I'm a big believer that it's crazy that in this time, like around now, this isn't popular, but the stats throughout the season matter so much more than these scrimmages. Like, I don't care if he was killing it at the free throw line or 3-point line. I don't remember what his stats were yesterday, but he just really struggles to shoot. He doesn't really know how to make quick decisions on the fly. And I think his body just really has to develop over the next few years. Like, he's 167 pounds. That's not going to last in the NBA. He's 6'4", but he's not a point guard. He does not have point guard skills. having that combination, it makes it extremely hard to slot him into an NBA roster. And even then, you have to wait probably 3 years to get those dividends. So he's 3 years away from being close to who he is. Maybe with a lot of muscle, he can make up for the undersized at 6'4", 6'5" range. I think it's an extremely uphill battle. And he didn't have a good season in Australia. It may not have been the best context, fine. But there's just too much going on there where I can't give the benefit of the doubt right now.
Yeah, I mean, he physically appears gangly, and you say, well, that'll fill out. And while I could get behind an early second round because, hey, the odds are you're not getting a contributor, and so maybe you find someone down the road that has potential, I can get behind that. The concern I would have is his basketball sense didn't look very high, and he's been playing professional basketball. And if you're trying to draft someone that you believe in the upside of, I think you typically want to believe in someone who's shown a good foot forward in the professional sense. And I think he's gotten better since going to Australia than he did necessarily when he had decided, hey, you know what, I'm going to go there and take that next venture. I think his basketball IQ has improved, but it concerns me a little bit that his plays are rudimentary. He passes to the wing, stands there. He's not much of a threat to shoot it. His form doesn't look very good to me. And there's lots of guys like this. But I would say those two guys are, for different reasons, have a lot of publicity in the second rounds. And I thought they put different foots forward today in Bronny James and AJ Johnson. Who else stood out to you from the scrimmages, wherever they may stand?
Yeah, one last guy before we hit a break here. I think in a negative way, I think it's worth talking about Harrison Ingram. He went 2 of 9, 0 of 5 from 3, but he had 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 blocks, 1 steal, 2 turnovers. I think this paints the picture beautifully because yesterday I'm going to pull up his box score, but I know for a fact his shooting was pretty good. It wasn't bad.
He shot well at Carolina this year too.
Yeah, so he went 3 of 5 from 3 yesterday, 0 of 5 today. What do you make of that? For me, I think it just measures it all. He's an extremely inconsistent shooter, and throughout all the years he's been in college, it has really it improved, but he's still inconsistent. And until that shot becomes consistent, I just struggle to see him on an NBA floor. What do you think?
Well, I saw him a ton at Stanford, as that's my preferred team, and he couldn't shoot at all. He was asked to do a ton, and he was asked to be the facilitator, the scorer, and he struggled to adapt to that role. At Carolina, he was more of a 3-and-D who could be a rebounder, use some of his physical strength and attributes to his advantage. And I thought he did a great job at Carolina. And I think it's a good decision he's here to be at the combine because he maximized his traits. But I don't think he's the shooter the percentage would indicate at North Carolina. But I also don't think he's as bad of a shooter as he was at Stanford. I think he actually made some nice intangible plays, demonstrated by the 6 rebounds, 6 assists. But I really do think what he does is more of the glue guys on the end of a bench is, hey, can he step in and make some good passes, rebound the ball, help morale? I don't think you're asking him to be an amazing player, but you could ask him to knock down shots, and that's the swing skill, like you said, is can he shoot the 3 at a consistent level? I thought his shots today looked close, and I know that's like, hey, they're make or miss league, but the fact that they were close on all of the launches encouraged me more than maybe scaring me does, because 3 of 5 matters more to me than an 0 and 5 in this environment, because a lot of people are rushing and forcing shots. The fact he went 3 of 5 in the first one shows me he's ready. He's not terribly scared. He just missed some shots today.
See, he had some bad misses though. Like I think last game he hit one off the backboard. Today he airballed one. That's the consistency stuff that we're talking about. And honestly, like you said though, like he can come off the end of a bench because he has other concerns beyond shooting. Like it's probably his biggest swing skill, but there's been some stuff about stiff athleticism, things like that. And I think if you're an end of bench guy that comes in spot minutes, that's where it becomes like it's completely negated. I think where, you don't have to worry about some of those defensive woes if you're shooting very well and things like that.
Yeah, I think that when you're trying to pick in the second round, which is the range that Harrison Ingram likely goes, I don't think you necessarily have to hyper focus on the deficiencies. You say, what does he do positively that can help our team? And I think he does enough of the rebounding. I think he was one of the best rebounders in the ACC. In fact, during ACC play, he led the league in rebounds, even more so than his teammate Armando Bacot. He passes well. He played point forward at Stanford. I think there's enough versatility, size, and then just enough on the track record of shooting decently to get him a look in the second round. But I wouldn't say that he did anything to help her to stock in the scrimmages. I think he was just a solid player that kind of knew how to play the game. Whereas some of these younger players, you didn't really have that sense. I thought that Jamal Shead's another guy who knew how to play the game. He's played in a lot of big games. His team is expected to win in Houston, and it showed. And I think that was kind of the case with the big schools, the big names who played a lot of games. You knew how they'd score. Obviously, I talked about Scheierman. I thought Trey Alexander was similar in that sense, and we'll talk about some of those guys coming up next. But I think the veterans shined once more.
Yeah, agreed. And we'll talk about some of the best of the rest. But today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's especially important to let that out, especially to somebody who's unbiased on your life. For example, I could tell you about how the last game 4 of the Mavs playoff series really affected me and made me sad, and who the Mavs should draft. But sometimes that's not all that it is on one's mind, and you need a kind of unbiased audience all the same. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. It's back here with Leif Thulin. My name is Richard Stayman, aka Mavs Draft. Really appreciate everybody who continues to make Locked On NBA Big Board your first listener of the day. Let's talk about the best of the rest. I thought this is kind of interesting. So Jonathan Givony posted the standouts from just now, the game. He said AJ Johnson, Bronny James, Alex Caravan, Adem Bona, Oso Ighodaro. I thought it was, first of all, very interesting. You left off Scheierman. I think just watching that game, objectively the best player on that floor in that game.
Statistics didn't measure his impact.
Agreed.
And I also felt like Caravan didn't really have a very good game. I think those are kind of garbage time points.
He got a lot of his off of cuts and putbacks, like his points. He went 4 or 5, but he took 1 3.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that was a game that was indicative of Alex Caravan's, what he's going to do, what he does well, or anything of the above. I think this is just box score watching, honestly. And Caravan didn't do very much on the floor. I thought he played intelligently, but he didn't add that much to the team. And I feel like a big omission would be Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead didn't have a good game shooting the ball, but he bossed everything around offensively and defensively, pressured the ball. I don't think he's necessarily great offensively, and Richard's going to disagree, but the dude defends at the unbelievable level, pressuring the ball, and he got his team great looks. His assist numbers, had 6 assists, and he had 2 turnovers, but honestly, I thought he could have had closer to 10 assists if some of the teammates knocked down open shots that he created. And yeah, he doesn't shoot great, but he scored 13 points, and that's something. These type of games, it's hard to score because no one knows how to play together. So a point guard scoring and having 6 assists means something to me. And even though he's small, defensively rugged, I think there's a spot for him in the league. And I know that's not necessarily a popular opinion, but the more I watched him, the more I thought that.
Yeah, I disagree with Leif on this. I'm pretty out on him. I could see why he'd be at the end of a bench. But he went 3 of 11. He got to the line 3 times. That was impressive. 6 assists, 3 fouls, 2 turnovers, and 2 rebounds as well with a steal and a block. Like we said, he played great defense. It's just that shot making, like 2 of 4 from 3. So that leaves 1 of 7 from 2. That's extremely alarming. And his general scoring had been his issue. I think he's going to trend more as a barometer for a lot of guys, like as a don't let your client work out against him, more than he ends up being an NBA impactful guy. Like his most likely role is being that pesky defensive guard off the bench that plays once every 4 games. So I agree. He did look good today. He also played the second most, he played like starter level minutes. He was really the only starter that played even 20 minutes. Everybody else was off the bench. He did look good. Leif is right. He did look good. We disagree on where he ends up on the NBA spectrum. I just think he's too small. And the lack of really the shooting is the thing for me, but the lack of overall scoring is going to be what holds him back. What about some other guys in these games? I know you have some strong opinions on Dylan Jones, who went 0 of 4, had 6 assists, only 1 turnover, 1 steal, and 4 rebounds. What do you think of Dylan Jones? Explain to people why you're kind of just more out on him than a lot of other people.
Well, so he plays in Weber State, which is in Utah, and I'm from Utah, as you guys know. And so you get a lot of hype saying, oh, this guy's really good, and he kind of gets forced down your throat. And what I mean by my saying I'm out on him being a good prospect is, what does he do well at the NBA level? And I don't really have an answer, because what he did well is beat up on Big Sky competition by getting physically imposing rebounds. He scored by using his body, which is more developed than some of those players there. And it wasn't really skill reliant. You saw him score 0 points. He had some defensive standout performances, but he doesn't shoot it well. When he catches it, he head fakes, that's a scary sign in and of itself to me, is when you're open and you know you're not a shooter. And I would say, like, look, if the appeal for or the appeal against Jamal Shead is, hey, he can't shoot, and you know what, like, yeah, he's not a great offensive player and he's good defensively, and I get Dillon Jones is bigger than Shead, but Shead's a better defender, better leader, better creator than Jones. So Jones, to me, is slow-footed. He's competitive, and he has maximized what he can do, but it's against inferior competition compared to some of these other guys. And I'll take a guy like Jamal Shead, who's done it in the Big 12 and made it work. So I would prefer Jamal Shead over Dillon Jones, even though Jones' stats and metrics are favorable. So that's just my preference. I've seen him in both these combines this year and last year get outplayed by other guards. And it's not for lack of effort, but I just don't see how it translates up to the NBA.
I actually think he's got a role. I don't know what that role is. He's the hardest player for me to evaluate, because the rebounding, just everything really away from true shot creation is really impressive. I just don't know how it scales up with a lack of athleticism. But even in big games this year, I mean, at St. Mary's, he had 29 and 10 on 11 and 20. Against Yale, who was a tournament team, he kind of struggled, but he still had 17 and 15. Against Nevada, also a tournament team, 17, 11, and 7. Excuse me, that was against Wyoming. Against Nevada, he had 13, 12, 3, and 3.
But here's my argument against that, though. Though that's with him as the star. So what does he do as
Agreed.
a supplementary piece? And I don't think there's anything. He doesn't shoot it well off the catch. I don't think he's a point guard. And how much does he rebound at the NBA level? I don't think he's a better rebounder than someone like Harrison Ingram, where we already criticized his shooting. But Ingram's a 10 times better shooter than Jones, and he's a little bigger. So I think his spot in the league's narrow, even though I've seen him in first rounds of some people, especially in Utah. Everyone seems to think he's great, but I think you're overemphasizing the skills, but not recognizing what role he'll actually play versus what he started in.
That's why I have such difficulty with him, is because how does he scale down? But I really do think the shooting upside is there. He's shot 80% from the free throw line just about every year, 79% as a freshman. I do think there is something. I personally believe that intelligent players that do everything can scale down, rather than the guys who have to do everything because, like, the whole system depends on it and they can't figure out how to be even a second option. That's what scares me. I think that's where Dillon could stick. Again, though, like, we're talking about a guy who ultimately is probably a bench player, doesn't start. He's just tough, because how does he scale down? What is that one thing he does? When you scale down, like the way we talked about Baylor or Scheierman, when you scale down, he's going to have the shot. When his shot isn't falling, though, he can also pass. He can make others better. When teams are expecting him to shoot, he knows that he can pass. He can also grab some boards. He can play tough defense. Like, he may not lock guys up, but he'll still be tough. Where does Dillon Jones fall in that? Because I think his exact role of what he does and how to impact games when he's not having the ball gets a little bit tougher. That's what makes him one of the toughest evaluations, I think, in the entire draft. Any last players before we go?
What did you make of Oso Ighodaro's performance? Because he's someone that I think, depending the team, he's evaluated very differently, because he's more of a skillful big than someone that's going to be an enforcer. But I liked the way he played today. He went 100% from the field, and that has nothing to do with my evaluation. He brought the ball up, made nice passes, showed off some impressive verticality as a rim protector, and I just thought that his general sense of the game was impressive. And like I said, some of those guys who played in big games that are expected to win in college looked the best today. Yeah,
I was really shocked. There was a couple, I think he had two different times where he isolated. One was in transition, one was in the half court to the rim, and obviously he made it. So his final stat line was 11 points, 4 of 4 shooting. He got to the line. He had 1 and 1, and then a trip to the free throw line, 3 of 3. So perfect shooting day, 4 rebounds, 3 turnovers, 2 assists, 2 fouls. You live with the turnovers. One of them was Trey Alexander wasn't looking for the cut when it was very out.
Beautiful.
It was a beautiful pass, and that's, again, it's the process, not the result for a lot of these guys when none of them have played together. Oso is 100% the biggest team-dependent pick. Like, he right now is in my late 40s, early 50s, because I just don't know where he's going to land. If he ends up with a team like Golden State, who emphasizes short roll passing and just overall off-ball movement, he's going to thrive. If he goes to a place that's fully dependent on, like if he went to this current Clippers team I would have a lot of reservations with that because the system doesn't fit. And because of that, if he does go to the wrong team, if some team tries to trick themselves into saying, oh, we can do that, he's going to be put back on an uphill battle, having to face the first few years of his career trying to find that landing spot. And then, like we saw this with Malik Monk, it took him years to get under his feet, but he's been fantastic ever since he found his rhythm. And could that be with Oso Ighodaro? Who knows? But the NBA Draft Combine has completed. It's been a fantastic, again, there are still pro days, but it's a fantastic event. Monday was measurements. We talked about that. And as well as shooting numbers, we talked about the NBA Combine scrimmage yesterday and today. We have a ton going on still, I think, for the next month. Rafael obviously isn't, doing some episodes right now, but we're still doing as much as we can. I think with James as well, who is unable to make it. I think we got a lot coming up that you guys will enjoy. For Leif Thulin and Richard Stayman, we're out.